Well, Nate and I are at Kabul International Airport, and we're about to head over to Camp Phoenix to see if we can pick up a helicopter ride to get out east. Day 22 starts right now. Days like today are very frustrating for us. We only have 8 days left to get through 2 more RCs. Now this may end up being 40 days through Afghanistan. What are you going to do? You can't control the weather, but what I can control is what I do when I'm stuck at Kabul airport. After some thinking, I realized I hadn't had the chance to talk with someone who was finishing their tour here. I was curious to see what their perspective was now that they have a one-way ticket. So I walked over to the air terminal to see if I could find someone on their way home.
You know, I'll be honest, the funniest thing, I had a very indoor job my whole Air Force career, and then being a first sergeant, it's a very office job. Had somebody told me a year ago that I would get to drive a Humvee through the city, you know, doing convoys out to Camp Dubs or here or there, you know, I'm kind of proud of the fact that, you know, I had a whole bunch of missions under my belt driving around, and I did okay. I only had one accident.
Now, you have some people who, you know, don't want to leave the fob, don't want to get outside.
Oh, they're silly. I mean, really, for every, you know, I would say most of the people we ran into, especially the Afghans, we'd stop and buy bread, buy fruit. You know, there was some of the, have you ever been out to Camp Dubs? Well, if you go out, there's the one road, I think it's Route Green, after you go through the green zone and you're almost down there towards the Queen's Palace. There are a lot of shops and stalls and market kind of area along the street. You stop and we bought fruit a couple of times, we bought bread. Even out here on Purple, on the way to the airport, we'd stop and buy bread once in a while. And we were out at a couple of the shooting ranges and kids come up. They like to collect the brass when you're done. You know, so they hang out and you give them MREs and kind of hang around and talk with them a little bit. And usually the groups we were with would have interpreters, so you could actually talk to them. And, you know, most of the people are just people who want to do their stuff every day, you know, not blow you up. So I would say, really, if you just spent your whole time on the fob here, you totally missed out. So. I think that it makes a difference being polite, the drivers, you know, like just trying to have those sort of things where you come across more as we're here to help rather than we're here to occupy. I mean, you know, when we drive, we try really hard to be polite, you know, waving to everybody, you know, the kids wave back and stuff. And I think that makes a difference, I think, in terms of how they treat you. I mean, if you're the drivers, and they recognize the vehicles. Like if you drive the same roads all the time, they see the same people all the time. You know, especially with me, once they realize it's a girl driving, they all kind of want to pay attention. You know, I mean, you got the headset on and everything. It's hard to tell until you smile. But you see a lot of the same people over and over again. And I know they recognize the rude ones. You know, and I think it makes a difference if you try to be friendly. I kind of thought every time I drive outside the wire, somebody's going to be shooting at me. You know, you get that, you know, it's just that war movie mentality. But once you're here, like the first day I was here, you know, my very first experience was convoy from here to Phoenix. It's what, 5 miles. But, you know, once you get out there and there's just people on the streets, you know, but going in, you're kind of thinking, oh, there's going to be explosions and people shooting at you all the time. And it's not like that. You know, I think it's just a shame that it is the way it is. You know, I mean, you read up on the history and stuff, and I don't think there's any one thing that made it the way it is. But when you get to actually meet the Afghan people, you know, it's just such a shame that, like many of them, all they know is war, or all they know is oppressing women, or all they know is, you know, and there's a shame in that. But Like Hussein, the shopkeeper over at Phoenix. He and I had a long conversation when I told him I was driving to Georgia to see my daughter. And he asked how far it is, and I tell him, and he says, well, who goes with you? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm probably just going to get in my car and drive. And he's like, well, do you take a gun? No, I just get in the car and drive. He's like, well, how do you stay safe? And I'm like, we have police. And he's like, well, in Afghanistan, if a woman goes on a long trip, she'll get kidnapped and raped and bad things will happen. And I'm like, well, that's pretty much not, the norm in the United States. And then he's like, yeah, well, sometimes if women are driving in the city, they park their car and they get out of their car, a man will come up and kick them. And I'm like, well, I kick them back. Just for him to understand, for someone who spends so much time with Americans, all day, every day with Americans, and he still has no idea, that the culture is so different and that people have a lot more freedoms other places. But you would like to see him, not have the war and not have all that.
Well, we'll try again tomorrow to get to another regional command, and I hope as we bide our time in these holding patterns, you still find what we can bring you interesting. Join us tomorrow as we continue 30 days through Afghanistan.